Hello students and welcome back to the video lecture series of software engineering. Today's topic is software framework. I am your instructor Ms. Shruti Rawal. So let us study the first topic of today's lecture, that is framework activities. So if you recall, in the previous lecture we had discussed generic process model, right? And what does it consist? It consists of two activities. The first set of activities was framework activities and the second set of activity was umbrella activity. Now we are going to study the first set of activity, that is known as framework activities. And in framework activities, total we have 5 framework activities. The first being communication. Now what do you mean by communication framework activity in software development life cycle? Communication is basically the communication between the customer and the developer. What is discussed in this communication phase? Basically all the requirements that are proposed by the customer, they are analyzed by the developer, they are communicated with the customer via many methodologies. That can be a questionnaire, that can be a face-to-face communication, that can be different meetings, right? So basically what is discussed, the main thing that is discussed in communication is why is this software being developed, right? What is the actual reason? What is the main aim of developing this software? The second thing that is discussed in communication is what are the functionalities and features that the customer is expecting from the software, right? So you have this list of functionalities and features at the end of communication so that you can develop the software according to the demand of customer. The next thing that is discussed in communication phase is a rough budget estimate and a rough schedule estimate, but that is not planned during communication, it is just discussed verbally, right? The main objective of communication is to understand the general objective of the software and to understand the detailed functionalities and features of the you can say software. And these functionalities include the, you can say, functional requirement as well as non-functional requirement, right? What do you mean by functional and non-functional requirement? Let us take an example. Functional requirement, for example, if you are developing a college management system, right? So in college management system, one of the functionality is that student can search for the timetable, right? So that is one of the functionality. That is a functional requirement. Now what do you mean by non-functional requirement? Non-functional requirement are quality requirements. They are quality attributes that are required in your software. For example, security, right? We don't want that your college management system is hacked by one of your students. Do we want that? No. So that is one of the requirement which comes or falls under the category of non-functional requirement. So there will be a list of functional as well as non-functional requirement that you will discuss in communication phase. Okay. The next framework activity is, you can say, planning. So I told you that in communication phase we are just discussing rough estimation of cost and rough estimation of schedule. But in planning phase we are going to discuss or we are going to analyze the things in detail, right? So the first thing that we will do in detail is what will be the schedule, what will be the detailed schedule of developing this software, right? So for developing the schedule, we will need all the functionalities and features that we have as a work product of the first framework activity, that is communication. So we will, after communication phase, we will have a whole report of functionalities, that is functional requirement as well as non-functional requirement. So using that document, we will plan our whole software schedule. We will see that who are the persons, that is who are the human resources that will be allocated for this particular software development, what are the tasks that has to be assigned to particular developers, what will be the testing strategy that we will apply, what will be the process model that we will apply, what will be the detailed schedule, that is what week we are going to start, which task, who will perform that task, and what is the expected date for completion of that task, and what is the actual, or you can say, expected date for completion of our overall project, right? Also, along with schedule task, you will have rough estimation, that is your project estimation, you will have your budget estimation, you will have the resource planning, right? So that resource is not only your software resource, but they are the human resource also, they are the environmental resource also, right? So these all are the things that you take into consideration while planning. Also, one of the main factor that you consider while planning your software is risk management. Okay, are you going to apply risk management or not? The first thing that you will decide. And if you are going to apply risk management, what are the risks that you are going to manage? So there is a planning of whole risk management, which is also to be done in planning phase. So this was the second framework activity. The third framework activity is, you can say, modeling. Now, what do you mean by modeling? Here you can say that if I want to design a car, there should be a rough model which is designed before actually starting to design the car or actually constructing the car, right? So I have a pictorial representation of something that I want to develop, right? For example, you may have seen that architects draw the whole picture of your house, right? If you have a dream house which you want to construct, so you will have what are the number of bedrooms, what is the front view, what is the top view of your house, what are the dimensions of your house, right, where will be the balcony. So these all things you have in your mind, you talk that with the architect. Architect is developing the whole pictorial representation, or you can say you will have a small model also, you may have seen, right? So they may also develop this small model like thing for your house, so that you can get a better idea or better view of how your house will look like before actually seeing the house, so that if you have some changes, you can tell that changes there itself. So in software industry also you have modeling phase, that is the designing phase, wherein you have different sort of designing. You design the overall architecture of your software, you design the different components of your software, you design the user interface of your software, right? So you have different designing that you perform before actually developing the software, right? For that you can take the help of requirement engineering diagrams, right? So you may have the use case scenario, you may have the activity diagrams, you have different sort of diagrams. From that diagrams you can actually develop a model for your software. This is the third activity of software development life cycle. The next activity is construction. Now construction activity is basically combination of two activities, that is coding and testing. Okay, so construction, it means that once you have discussed everything with the customer, you are also having a plan when to develop the project, how to develop the project, who will develop the project, and also you have a designing of your software. Now the time comes when the actual developer starts to code, right? So they have the designing phase work product, so they have the design documents. In design documents they have the user interface design, they have the components design, they have the architecture design. Now what they need to do, they need to write the logic in the actual technology that you are going to use. So that is coding. After coding, what will happen? Yes, the testers will test the codes for any inconsistency or errors, right? So if there are any inconsistency and errors in your code, that should be rectified here itself before deployment or delivering it to the customer, right? And the last framework activity is deployment. Now what do you mean by deployment? Deployment is basically again a combination of two activities, you can say. The first is delivery or operational software to the customer and maintenance of the software, right? So once your testing is completed, you are now ready to deliver this software to the customer so that customer can use the software, and you are also ready to maintain the software. It means if the customer is encountering any errors, you are ready to rectify those errors. Also, if they are planning on upgrading the software in future, you will already have such an architecture in which you can upgrade the software. So you will also upgrade the software in future. That is the maintenance part. Okay, so deployment is basically delivering it to the customer and maintaining the software. So these are the 5 framework activity. Let us recall. The first one is communication, the second one is planning, the third one is modeling, the fourth one is construction, and the fifth one is deployment. Now these are the 5 framework activities which are to be performed in any software irrespective of the process model that you are following. Okay, now the next set of framework activities that we had learned in our generic process model was umbrella activities. And if you recall, umbrella activities are the activities that run in background irrespective of the framework activities. So they are running simultaneously with the framework activities. It is not dependent on framework activities. They are the activities that run in background. Okay, now let us study what are the different umbrella activities. The first umbrella activity is project tracking and control. Now what do you mean by project tracking and control? In the planning phase, we have already discussed, or we have already analyzed, or we have already detailed that what will be the schedule of our project, what will be the task that we have to accomplish, right? So umbrella activity, the one of the umbrella activity is project tracking, in which we are tracking the whole project, that are we going according to our schedule, are we going according to our plan or not, right? For example, there may be a task that should be completed in week, right? It was expected to be completed in week in our planning document, but when you have started the actual development, project tracking and control is an activity which will tell you what is the actual development time. Is it week, which is exactly that we have planned, or it is less than week, or it is greater than week? So actually we are seeing the deviations, right? So we have a planning document and now we are actually starting the project. What is the deviation between that? That is what project tracking and control does. So if we are deviating, right, if we are completing the task early, the thing that we need to analyze is the project or the task being completed quality wise or not, right? Because haphazardly, and if you are doing everything in hurry, it is a possibility that you are compromising the quality, which we do not want in software engineering. Also, if you are delaying the project task, it may affect the schedule and it may affect our reputation and our relationship with the customer. That also we don't want. So along with the tracking, what we are doing? Controlling, right? We are trying to control the deviation. We are trying to you can say reduce the gap of planning and the actual project, right? The next activity, or you can say umbrella activity, is risk management. Now risk management is also an activity that you can perform in any of the framework activity. So there is a risk in communication activity, there is a risk in designing activity, in modeling, construction and maintenance activity. The list of risk, the type of risk, the nature of risk differs, right? The priority of risk differs, the probability of risk differs. You have to develop a methodology in which in every framework activity, what are the risks that you are going to manage, that you have to list out according to the priority and according to the probability which they are going to occur, right? So that is known as risk management. The next activity is quality assurance. Now the whole concept of software engineering revolves around maintaining the software quality, right? So quality assurance is a major umbrella activity which is applied to every framework activity, starting from communication till deployment, and there is a whole team, that is software quality assurance team, which is solely dedicated for assuring all the activities are performed quality wise, right? So if you are not performing quality communication, what will happen? All the other activities will suffer, right? So for example, if you are communicating with the customer and there is some sort of miscommunication in requirement gathering, what will happen? There is a miscommunication in requirement gathering, so your documentation is faulty, and due to this faulty documentation, your actual implementation of that particular requirement will also be faulty. What will happen? The customer will be dissatisfied. It is possible that your project may fail. We don't want such consequences, and for that you will have quality assurance team which is assuring that no activity is without quality, right? The next umbrella activity is technical review. Now technical review is a major part of quality assurance, and which is performed in every activity, right? So whether you are developing a design, for example, you are in the modeling phase in which you are developing a pictorial representation, or with any other methodology you are developing a design of your software, there is a dedicated technical reviewer team which will review your design, which will see if there is any inconsistency in your design. For example, there will be an algorithm which you are designing, right? Now algorithm is majorly dependent on two type of complexity, that is time complexity and space complexity. It may be possible that your space complexity is good but time complexity is worse. What will happen? Yes, the technical reviewers will tell you that this algorithm is inconsistent with respect to time complexity, which we cannot bear. So you may have to do some logical changes in your algorithm. This can only be happened if you have an experienced team who are a technical reviewer, who can review the activities, who can give feedback to your developers or the designers. As a result of this, overall quality of your software will increase, right? The next umbrella activity is measurement. Now if you recall our software engineering definition, there was a word called quantifiable. Now in that definition, quantifiable, it means everything in software engineering or all the process or methods that you are performing in software engineering should be measurable. There should be some sort of quantity attached to that, right? So measurement are basically, there are two types of measurement: direct measurement and indirect measurement, right? So direct measurement includes measurements of, you can say, line of code, right? So you are measuring the line of code, you are measuring the number of people that are attached, you are measuring the cost, right? So these all are the things that can be directly measured. Indirect measure is how secure your software is, how reliable your software is, right? So the non-functional things that you are measuring are indirect measure. You have to provide quality in both of them. That is measurement umbrella activity. The next is configuration and reusability management, right? Now we have also studied that although the software industry is moving towards component based, majority of the things is custom built, but still we are trying to accommodate as much as usability, reusability in software development as possible. And for that you have to develop your software architecture in such a way that there are some reusable modules, right? So you are developing a reusability management whole activity that is known as an umbrella activity. Also all the configuration, it means, for example, once you are developing the software, you may have different versions of the software. Whatever version you are going to deploy latest, you have to have a proper version management software for controlling the versions. What are the changes in that particular version, that also you have to see, right? So that is a configuration and reusability management that you have to perform. And the last umbrella activity is work product preparation. Now, what do you mean by work product? Work product is something that is deliverable to the customer or any other stakeholder, right? For example, if your communication activity is completed, what is the work product of communication activity? You will have a requirement gathering document. So that is a work product of communication activity. When you are completing the planning, what is the work product of planning? You will have a plan document. When you have designing, you will have a design document. So these all are the work product after every major activity is completed. How will you produce this work product? What is the methodology of producing the work product? What are the things that you are going to include in this work product? Individual work product preparation, that is also one of the umbrella activities which you have to perform, so that it is appropriate, or you can say you are assured that the work product that you are delivering to any stakeholder is a quality work product, right? Now let us study software myths. Now in software industry there are some myths that are still prevalent, and we have divided into 3 major categories of myth, that is the management myth, customer myth and developer myth. We will start with the management myth. Now, who are the people who are involved in management? Management people are the CEO level peoples, or you can say the senior managers of your company, right? Let us study what are the myths that the managers are having and what is the actual fact that is opposed to the myth. The first myth that management is having is that we have books full of standards and procedures to build a system, and which are enough, right? So what is the management actually thinking? That we have a library in our company, we have books that are full of standards and procedures. If the developer are stuck somewhere in any technology, they can refer the books and they can continue the development. Is this correct? No, here it is clearly written it is a myth. Now, why it is a myth? Because the fact is, although you have books that are having standards and they are existing, but are they actually used? Does the developer have proper time to use those books? Right. We know that in college also, if we want to read a whole reference book, we get stuck. Now, developers are always on a tight schedule, on a tight deadline, and if they are getting stuck somewhere, are they going to refer the whole reference book? I think no. So even though there is a book that is full of standards and procedures, it is not being used. Also, it is a possibility that practitioners, that is the developers, are not at all aware about the existence of books, right? So even though they want to read the book, they are not aware that whether that book is available or not, right? Also, you know that software industry is very fast paced, it is ever changing. So whatever books you have in your library, it is possibility that they are obsolete, they are not currently in use, the technology has already changed. So what will happen if your books are not according to the standards of current market? It is of no use, right? Also, is it complete? Now again, I told you that in technology also there are some things which are adding on day by day, right? Now, if that book is an old book, it is not a complete book because all the technologies addition is not included in that particular book, right? So you have to update your library stock very rapidly if you want to be up to date to the market needs. So this is a fact that even though you have books that are of standards and procedures, they are not used. The next myth of management is that if you are behind the schedule, you can catch up the schedule by adding more programmers, right? So management people always think that, okay, now according to the plan, our project was to be completed in 3 months, okay, but we are behind the schedule, it is already 4 months and we are halfway through. So what we will do, we will add 5 more programmers and we will catch up the schedule, right? So this is actually a myth of management. Why? Because if you are adding more programmers to a project which is already late, it will actually late the project more. Why? Because the programmers who are added halfway through the project, they are unaware about what the project is, what the coding is, what they need to do, right? So already the programmers who are working on the project, now instead of working on the project, they have to shift their attention from working to teaching. So the new programmers who have been added in your project are now taking the training from the actual programmers, right? So the whole thing is now messed up. So adding programmers to a late project makes the project more late. That is a fact. Still the management does not believe it, right? The next myth of management is that outsourcing a project to another firm, that is third party, that will be okay, and then we can sit and relax. Okay, so what are they thinking? They are thinking that we will take one project and we will outsource this to a third party. Now outsourcing can be fun, it can be relaxing in some of the cases, but not in every case. Now if you are not aware about the internal requirements of the actual project, what you will do, you cannot convey this to the third party, right? So there is a general rule that if someone is talking to me directly, there will be some things that I am missing. Now that whole thing, if I am conveying to the third party, that third party will miss some more things, right? So it is like that. If you are outsourcing the project, if you yourself are not clear about the requirements of the actual party or customer, that will unnecessarily create problems, right? And everything will be out of control. The next set of myth is customer myth, and the first customer myth is general statement of objective is enough to start writing a program. What does customer think? Customer thinks that I will tell that this is my objective, that I want to develop a library management software which has the book search facility and which has a book issue facility in which I can see the reports, right? So this is very general statement for library management system, but customer thinks that once I have stated this, the developers can start writing the program, they can start constructing it. Is it enough? No, you must provide an upfront definition, all the major causes, all you can say all the major functionalities, you have to discuss it front hand with the developer before the developer starts making the program, because the major cause of failure of any project is lack of communication, miscommunication, and this myth, that is general objective, right? The next myth of customer is that software requirements change continuously. Now because customer is paying you, they are thinking that they are king, and whenever they request, change should be accommodated, right? But is it the case? The fact is, yes, software requirements change continuously, but there is a certain stage, there is a certain you can say constraint when and how the software cannot change, right? So you have to pay serious attention to the architecture of the software, that is customer has to pay, and accordingly the customer has to request the change, because if there are major changes, for example, if the software is in testing phase and now customer is requesting something in architecture to be changed, and you do not have developed the architecture such that it is flexible, what will happen? You cannot accommodate the change, which customer does not understand. The next set of myth is developer's myth, or you can say practitioner's myth. The first myth of developer is job is done once program is written and works. Okay, so what does the developer do? Developer constructs the program, that is writes the program, runs the program. Once it is error free at his side and at tester's side, if it is working properly, developer is thinking my job is done. That is not the case. Once you are deploying it to the customer will request changes, you have to accommodate the changes. So 80% of the work for a developer starts after your project is delivered to the customer. That is a fact which developer does not understand, right? The next myth of developer is that until program get running, there is no way to assess quality. What does this mean? It means that developer always think that if I am not coding, I cannot assess the quality of my project. That is not true. Even though you are in communication activity, you can assess the quality of your project for that particular activity. So even though you have not started the coding, you can assess quality of every task or every activity for every phase of software development life cycle. So it is not the case that coding is the only thing for which quality can be checked. Okay, that is a myth of developer. So one of the most accurate or effective method for you can say checking the quality apart from code is technical review, as we have discussed that in umbrella activity, right? The next developer myth is that successful project is a working program. Now what does developer think? Developer always think that if I have a working program, that is enough for the customer. Nothing else is required. But is this true? No. Because customer may be novice customer, they are unaware about how to use the software, right? So you must provide a documentation to the customer along with the working program. That is very necessary, which the developer thinks it is unnecessary, right? the next myth of developer is that software engineering make or it creates voluminous and unnecessary documentation and which slows us down. Now software engineering methodology is a methodology which you have to apply in the whole software development life cycle, starting from the requirement analysis till maintenance. So you have a lots of documentation to create. Now developers are not, you can say, accustomed for developing this documentation. They are always ready to code, but they are never ready to document the code, right? So they think that this is unnecessary. The software engineering standards are all very voluminous and we don't need to actually provide this to the customer or to the internal team. So that is a myth. Why? Because if you want to maintain a reputation in the of this company in the market, if you want to follow some standards, if you want the certification of the standards, then you have to create this documentation, and this documentation actually guarantees you that the software that you are creating will be quality software. And in fact it is seen that the whole time duration of creating this documentation and plus the coding basically is lesser if you are not developing the documentation at all. Why? Because if you are not developing the documentation, it means you are not developing a quality software, and if there is not a quality software, there are more bugs, if there are changes, then there will be a difficulty in accommodating the changes, finding the bugs, resolving those bugs, right? So in short, the whole duration of rectifying the software will exceed then the development of documentation plus coding in the software engineering methodology, right? So that is a myth of developer. So these were all the myths, starting from the management myth, from customer and developer. And this was all about today's lecture. Thank you.